So in your peel and paint kit, you are going to get a canvas, a set of branded paints, just like you can see behind me, a foam brush, a small fine tip brush, a plate, and a popsicle stick for mixing colors, as well as a vinyl of your design. The only other things that you might need would be an apron, or an old rag or paper towel, and make sure that your table is set with newspaper or a plastic tablecloth. Here are a couple different designs that we have for our peel and paint kits. The first step is to create the outside shape. So think of it like a coloring book. We want to create the lines onto our canvas. So here we use dark gray, and on our gnomes we used our black. And depending on whichever kit you have, you're going to use your darkest shade to create those lines. In order to create those lines, we need to transfer our vinyl onto our canvas. So our vinyl is like a three-way sticker. There's a front, a middle, and a backing. So what we want to do is we're going to scrape the whole thing and peel off the backing. You can use a scraper, you could use a credit card, you can just even use your hand to give this a really good rub. Once that's rubbed down, we're going to flip it over and peel off our backing. So we want our white piece to come apart from our vinyl. If you find that any pieces start to peel off, just push it back down and give it another rub. All right, our vinyl is ready. Now the back is very sticky. We're going to place our sticky side onto our canvas. Once that's on there, we're going to give it another scrape. Once that's down, we're going to peel off the clear transfer tape off of the top. This works best if you start at a corner and peel flat and diagonally across. Again, if you find any spots starting to come up, just give it another rub down to press it. So because we're creating an outline with this image, we want to make sure that our vinyl is stuck to the canvas as much as possible so no bleeding comes underneath of the vinyl. So make sure that you give it a really good rub around all of the edges to make sure that it is stuck down very, very well. All right, we are ready to paint. So I have my paint that came in my kit, as well as my foam brush, plate, and a popsicle stick for mixing shades. So I'm going to create an outline, again, similar to a coloring book for these clouds. I'm going to use my gray that came in my kit and just take a little bit out on the side here. I'm going to use my foam brush and put a thin layer across all of my rainbow and clouds. I'm not going to touch my letters just yet, but I want to do a thin coat, let it dry, and then do a second coat. If the paint is too thick, it will bleed underneath all of our vinyl, which we want to avoid. Okay, so I have 2 coats of gray on my rainbow to create the outlines that I'm looking for. So the next step that I'm going to do on mine is I'm going to actually peel out my clouds, and I'm going to paint the inside just a lighter shade of gray. So again, depending on whichever design you have, you can create it however you want. To peel it, you could use a toothpick, or a bamboo stick, a skewer, or just your fingers. All right, I have some awesome looking clouds here, and I'm still gonna use my gray. I'm just going to add a small amount of white to create a lighter shade. So on your plate and using your popsicle stick, you can mix that just off to the side. You also should have a nice fine tip brush in your kit as well. So when we're painting the inside, we're going to be using this brush to make sure that we get as much detail as possible. when you're painting, you want to make sure that you do your best not to go onto the lines that you've already created because they're a nice solid edge. You want to have nice thin coats. 2 coats of thin paint work better than 1 thick coat. Okay, so I have 2 coats of my lighter shade of gray on my clouds here. Now please remember that this does take patience and it will take time. You cannot rush through this. You want to make sure that you're being very particular, especially around the edges. For my next step, I'm going to take my next shade, so I have a blue in my kit, and my white again, and I'm going to continuously mix this. So I'm going to have an ombre effect on my rainbow. So it's gonna go from the darkest blue to a nice light blue, and I'm gonna do the same thing on my words at the bottom here. So I'm going to need both my foam brush and my fine tip brush for this. I'm going to peel the first section of my rainbow and paint that the darkest. So again, using my fine tip brush, I'm going to paint only where the white is. I'm trying my best not to go over onto the gray. Okay, so I have my first section on my rainbow done. Now I'm going to paint this end section of my letters. So using my foam brush, I'm taking a little bit of my paint just in the tip, and I'm gonna dab that off. I just need a very, very, very small amount, and I'm going to go straight up and down in a dabbing motion on these last couple letters right here. If you're using a dabbing motion, that's going to prevent bleeding underneath the vinyl as well. Okay, so I'm ready to move on to my next section of rainbow. So for this, I'm going to peel this part, and in the middle, I'm going to mix a slightly lighter shade of blue. So using my popsicle stick, I will take some blue into the middle, and then just a smidgen of white. Okay, so I'm happy with that shade there. Now I'm going to do the same thing using my fine point brush in this area and my foam brush in this area. Okay, so my next shade is all done. I've done the rainbow and my letters. So all I'm going to do is continually add white into that same paint just to keep making a lighter shade. All right, so I'm happy with that next shade. I'm just going to keep continuing. Remember to be patient when you're painting. Take your time and do a nice thin layer. You can always add a second coat. If you go too thick, it's very difficult to take the paint off. You can always add more later though. Okay, so I have finished my ombre effect on my rainbow, and I am ready to peel the background. But first, I'm just gonna go over a few tips and tricks. So make sure that you are patient. Take your time and use your fine tip brush for any small areas. Use your large foam brush for any of the bigger areas. And make sure that when you're peeling piece by piece, cover that white canvas. You don't want to have any spots of white poking through. Okay, so I'm ready to peel and reveal the final results. Grab a corner and just peel away. Thank you so much for following along our new peel and paint tutorial. Remember that you can use all of these techniques on all of our different designs that we offer. But remember to use the tips and tricks, for the best results. And get creative, we'd love to see what you come up with. Mix your colors, make the ombre, make a new color, we'd love to see it. So when you're done your work, please tag us on Instagram at Pinovate. And follow us as well. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Thanks for following.